The clock is ticking. Chapter 1. The Hunger for Change. The sun barely rose over the small, rundown neighborhood of Hopeville as Ethan, a 17-year-old boy, ran through the empty streets. The air was still cool, but his mind raced. His clothes, ragged and worn, flapped against his legs as he sprinted past the crumbling brick houses. His shoes had holes, and his stomach growled, but that didn't stop him. Every day, the same. He was too poor to afford anything, too small to fight for respect, and too tired to continue, but something in him burned, a relentless hunger for a better life. Ethan's father, long gone, had left him with little more than his mother's struggle and the relentless buzz of responsibility. His mother worked 3 jobs, yet the bills still piled up. His younger sister, Lily, needed medicine that they couldn't afford. But Ethan had a plan. The only way out was through opportunity. And Ethan believed that if he could just find it, he could change their lives forever. Chapter 2. The opportunity that came too late. One cold evening, after another grueling day of walking home from school, Ethan overheard a conversation at a local coffee shop. 2 businessmen were discussing a new startup that was revolutionizing the tech industry. One of them, the CEO, was holding auditions for apprentices, promising big money and the chance to change one's life. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment. The opportunity he'd been waiting for. If he could only get a foot in the door, his whole world could change. But there was a catch. The auditions were invitation only, and the people invited were well-dressed, well-educated, and connected. He was none of those things. The next morning, Ethan set out on a mission. He cleaned himself up, borrowed clothes from a friend, and stood outside the company's headquarters. He waited. The hours passed. And just when he thought it was all over, a well-dressed man walked by. Ethan's heart raced as he approached the man, asking if there was any chance he could speak with someone inside. The man paused, looking him up and down. Then, surprisingly, he handed Ethan a business card and said, "You've got spirit, kid. Call this number tomorrow." Ethan was ecstatic. He knew he had the chance of a lifetime. Chapter 3. The Challenge. The next day, Ethan made the call. To his surprise, the CEO himself answered. "Who is this?" the voice on the other end asked, with a slight edge of curiosity. "Ethan," he replied. "I'm the boy you met outside your office. You gave me your card." There was a pause. Then, the CEO spoke. "Listen, kid, we've got a lot of applicants. What makes you think you can handle this? What sets you apart from everyone else?" Ethan swallowed his fear. "I'm willing to work harder than anyone. I'm not asking for a handout, I just need a chance." The CEO laughed, a cold, calculating sound. "All right, Ethan. I'll give you a chance. Meet me tomorrow at the office. But know this, if you can't keep up, you'll be out. There are no second chances." Chapter 4. The Test. Ethan showed up the next day, his nerves on edge. There were dozens of well-dressed applicants in the lobby, all looking confident and ready to take on whatever challenge lay ahead. They all looked like they had been born with silver spoons in their mouths. Ethan, on the other hand, looked like he had barely scraped by to even get there. The CEO appeared and walked them to a large conference room. He stood before them, surveying the group. "Today," he began, "you'll all be tested. Not just on your intelligence, but on your grit, your persistence, and your ability to think outside the box." Ethan felt the weight of the words. The tests were grueling, long hours of problem-solving, pitching ideas, and performing under pressure. Many of the applicants faltered, their confidence shattered by the difficulty of the tasks. But Ethan, despite his lack of formal education or resources, kept pushing forward. He had never been given anything in life, so he knew how to work for every inch of progress. By the end of the day, only a handful remained. Ethan was one of them. But the CEO, cold and unfeeling, stood before them with a smirk. "You've all done well," he said. "But I have to say, the ones with the highest marks today are the ones with connections. Money. Prestige." Ethan's heart sank. He had worked so hard, but it seemed like it was all for nothing. Chapter 5, The Twist. As the CEO prepared to announce the final selection, Ethan felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around to find the well-dressed man who had given him the business card earlier. "Don't leave yet, kid," the man said quietly. "There's something you need to know." Confused, Ethan followed the man to a small office at the back of the building. "That CEO," the man continued, "isn't who you think he is. He's not the real power behind the company. I am." Ethan's eyes widened. The man pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were documents detailing the company's hidden practices, exploiting poor workers, taking advantage of the very people they claimed to help. "I know what you're doing," Ethan said, his voice shaking with emotion. "But why didn't you say anything?" The man smiled. "Because sometimes, Ethan, the biggest opportunity isn't the one in front of you. It's the one you can create yourself." The man explained that he had been watching Ethan's persistence from the start. He wasn't interested in hiring Ethan to work for the company. Instead, he was offering him something far more valuable, a chance to take down the CEO, expose the corruption, and build something better. Chapter 6, The New Beginning. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't the opportunity he had imagined, but it was an opportunity nonetheless. The chance to do something bigger, something meaningful. He didn't need to work for the corrupt system. He could dismantle it from the inside. With the man's help, Ethan took the documents to the authorities, and within weeks, the CEO was arrested. The company was forced to shut down, and Ethan was left with the power to create something new. The twist? Ethan's journey wasn't about landing the job of his dreams. It was about realizing that sometimes, the struggle isn't just about surviving, it's about reshaping the world around you. Ethan didn't need to wait for an opportunity to come to him. He created it. This is just a brief version of the story, but it sets up the idea of struggling against the odds, realizing the true nature of opportunities, and finding the courage to create change. The roar of the engines echoed through the vast expanse of the racetrack. The sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt, heat waves rising in ghostly patterns. Jason Carter gripped the steering wheel of his car, heart hammering against his ribs. He had one chance. One shot to prove himself. This race would determine his future. Life had never handed him anything. Orphaned at a young age, Jason bounced between foster homes, each one colder than the last. His only solace had been watching races, dreaming of the day he could sit behind the wheel himself. But dreams, he had learned, were fragile things. If he wanted this, he had to fight for it, and fight he did. He worked tirelessly in garages, saving every penny until he could afford his first rusted-down car. Late nights were spent tuning it, pushing it beyond its limits on empty roads. Now, after years of struggle, here he was, standing on the precipice of his dream, a chance to race professionally. The announcer's voice blared through the speakers. "Drivers, take your positions." Jason clenched his jaw. Around him, seasoned racers revved their engines, eyes gleaming with confidence. They had sponsors, expensive cars, and a lifetime of training. He had grit. The starting lights flickered. Red. Yellow. Green. He punched the accelerator, tires screeching against the track. The car leaped forward, but the competitors were relentless. Sweat dripped down his brow as he maneuvered through the chaos, each turn a battle, each straightaway a desperate bid to inch ahead. His knuckles whitened on the wheel. The finish line loomed. And then, a blur in the corner of his eye. A car spun out, colliding into another. Metal screamed. The crash was inevitable. Jason had milliseconds to react. He could swerve, avoid the wreckage, and possibly win. But that meant leaving a fellow racer in danger. His instincts took over. He twisted the wheel, aiming for the wreck, tires screeching in protest. His car slammed to a halt inches from the other driver, who was slumped over the wheel. Without hesitation, Jason unbuckled, rushed to pull him out just as flames licked at the wreckage. By the time the paramedics arrived, the race was over. He had lost, or so he thought. The next day, his name flooded headlines, not as a racer who lost, but as a hero who made a choice when it mattered most. Sponsors reached out, teams called, and opportunities he had never dreamed of came knocking. In trying to prove himself as a racer, he had proved something far greater. Character is what defines true success, because opportunities don't wait, but sometimes, the right ones find you when you least expect them. Rain lashed against the windows of my office, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. A crimson envelope, stark against the mahogany desk, bore only 2 words: "Don't waste your time." Inside, a single, antique key and a cryptic note: "Destiny has a deadline. Find the clock." My name, Detective Leo Maxwell, was synonymous with lost causes, but this was different. This was personal. My father, a renowned clockmaker, vanished 10 years ago, leaving behind only his unfinished masterpiece, a clock said to predict the future. I jammed the key into my grandfather's old pocket watch, a nervous habit I hadn't broken since childhood. It clicked open, revealing not the time, but a miniature replica of a clock tower I hadn't seen in years, the one atop the abandoned city museum. Destiny, it seemed, was impatient. I raced through the rain-slicked streets, the city lights blurring into a kaleidoscope of urgency. The museum loomed, a Gothic monolith against the stormy sky. Inside, dust motes danced in the moonlight filtering through the grimy windows. The air was thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. The clock tower room was a chaotic jumble of gears, springs, and half-finished clock faces. In the center, the grand clock, my father's obsession, stood silent, its intricate mechanism frozen. I recognized the keyhole instantly. It fit. With a click, the clock sprang to life, the hands spun wildly, then stopped, pointing to a date: tomorrow at noon. Beneath the clock face, a hidden compartment clicked open, revealing a small, leather-bound diary. It was my father's. He wrote about his fear, a premonition of his own death, linked to a shadowy organization known as the Kronos Syndicate. They believed his clock held the key to controlling time itself. He'd hidden the final piece, a crystal lens, somewhere only I could find. The diary mentioned a series of clues hidden within the clock's mechanism. I worked feverishly, deciphering the intricate symbols, each click and whir of the clock a countdown to noon. The clues led me through the museum, each room a memory of my childhood, each object a piece of the puzzle. I found the lens hidden inside a hollowed-out statue of Father Time, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light, back in the clock tower. I placed the lens into its designated slot. The clock whirred, the hands spinning again, but this time, they stopped at a different time, 11:59 a.m. A single minute before noon. A hidden panel in the clock face slid open, revealing a message: the future is not fixed. It is a choice. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of shattering glass. Figures in black suits, their faces obscured by shadows, emerged from the broken window. The Kronos Syndicate. They wanted the lens, they wanted the clock, they wanted to control time. A fierce struggle ensued. I fought with a desperation fueled by years of unanswered questions, by the memory of my father. I managed to activate a hidden mechanism in the clock, triggering a deafening alarm and locking the syndicate members inside the tower. I grabbed the lens and the diary, escaping just as the police sirens wailed in the distance. I had the answers, I had the truth. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Reading my father's diary, I discovered the truth about his disappearance. He hadn't been killed by the syndicate. He had faked his own death. He'd realized the immense power of the clock, the danger it posed. He'd gone into hiding to protect it, to protect me. The Kronos Syndicate was a fabrication, a story he'd invented to make me believe I was in danger, to keep me away from the clock. The "don't waste your time" message wasn't a threat, it was a plea. A plea to live my life, to not get consumed by the obsession that had consumed him. The twist? The real destiny wasn't about controlling time. It was about choosing how to spend it. Don't waste your time, a life-changing motivational mystery. Detective James Calloway had seen countless cases in his time, but none like this. The case seemed simple at first: a missing millionaire, Vincent Holloway. A self-made man, Holloway had built his empire from nothing. But his sudden disappearance left the entire city speculating. Some claimed he had fled due to financial troubles, others whispered of something more sinister. As Calloway dug deeper, he uncovered a pattern. Holloway had been obsessed with time, wasting it, saving it, controlling it. His mansion was filled with clocks, his schedule planned to the second. But why would a man so obsessed with efficiency simply vanish without a trace? His investigation led him to Holloway's last known location, a secluded mountain cabin. The air was thick with pine and secrecy. Inside, Calloway found an open laptop, still running, displaying a single message: "Don't waste your time." The detective's instincts told him there was more to this than met the eye. He traced Holloway's final communications and found an unexpected lead: a young woman named Eleanor Grayson, a motivational speaker. She had once been an ordinary woman struggling with self-doubt, always comparing herself to others, until Holloway entered her life. Eleanor revealed that Holloway had mentored her, teaching her the secret of success: time was the only true currency. People waste years comparing themselves to others, measuring their worth by someone else's achievements, she said. Vincent taught me to value my own path, but Calloway still had questions. Why disappear? What was the message on the laptop about? Then, he found a hidden note in Holloway's safe: "The greatest crime is wasting time. I won't be part of it anymore." Suddenly, it hit him. Holloway hadn't been kidnapped. He hadn't been murdered. He had erased himself. Holloway had spent years building an empire only to realize he had been running a race against himself. So, he did the unthinkable: he abandoned his identity, his wealth, and his past to live without the burden of time. Calloway was left with a choice: reveal the truth or let Holloway live his new life. Standing in the quiet of the mountain air, he closed the case file and walked away, realizing that, for the first time in years, he had stopped watching the clock. The real mystery isn't where Holloway went, it's what we are all doing with our time.
Rain lashed against the windows of my office, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. A crumpled note lay on my desk: "Don't waste your time, don't compare yourself to anyone." Cryptic, even for a detective. But this wasn't just any note. It was left beside the body of renowned astrophysicist, Dr. Alistair Finch, found dead in his observatory last night. Cause of death: accidental fall. The police bought it. I didn't. Finch was meticulous, a man who measured every step, both literally and figuratively. He wouldn't just fall. "My name is Leo Maxwell, and I specialize in the cases the police can't, or won't, solve." Finch's death felt wrong. The note felt wrong. Everything about this case screamed something more. I picked up the note, the cheap printer paper surprisingly thick. A watermark, barely visible, shimmered beneath the light, a stylized hourglass. "Time waits for no one," the motto of the exclusive Kronos Society, a group of academics and industrialists obsessed with time, its manipulation, and its perceived scarcity. Finch was a member. My gut clenched. This was bigger than a simple fall. I visited the observatory, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood, now cleaned. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of sunlight piercing the gloom. Finch's telescope, a behemoth of polished brass and glass, pointed towards the heavens. I examined the area around the telescope. Nothing seemed out of place. Then I noticed a faint scratch on the polished floor, almost hidden by the rug. It was too deliberate to be accidental. Someone had moved the telescope. I checked Finch's research. He was working on a radical new theory about time dilation, something that could revolutionize space travel. Or weaponize time itself. The Kronos Society's interest suddenly made sense. They wouldn't want his research getting out. Had they silenced him, my investigation took me into the opulent world of the Kronos Society. Meetings held in secret, whispered conversations about manipulating time for the betterment of humanity. Their leader, the enigmatic Elias Thorne, exuded an aura of power and control. He denied any involvement in Finch's death, his voice smooth as silk. But I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of fear, perhaps. I delved deeper, uncovering a web of rivalries and betrayals within the society. Finch wasn't the only one working on time dilation. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a brilliant but overlooked physicist, was also on the verge of a breakthrough. Could she have killed Finch to steal his research? She was certainly ambitious enough. I confronted Reed, but she vehemently denied any involvement. She was frustrated, yes, resentful of Finch's recognition, but not a murderer. She showed me her own research, a different approach to time dilation, more theoretical, less practical than Finch's. It was clear she was telling the truth. The pressure was mounting. Thorne and the Kronos Society were growing suspicious of my inquiries. I received veiled threats, warnings to back off. But I was too close. I knew Finch's death was connected to his research, to the society, to the obsession with time. Then, I found it. A hidden compartment in Finch's desk, containing a small, intricately crafted clock. It wasn't just a clock. It was a key. A key to a hidden room beneath the observatory. I slipped inside, the air cold and damp. In the center of the room, a massive machine hummed with barely contained power. It was Finch's time dilation device, far more advanced than anything I had imagined, but I wasn't alone. Thorne emerged from the shadows, his face contorted with rage. He confessed to killing Finch, not to steal his research, but to protect it. Finch had discovered something dangerous, something that could unravel the fabric of time itself. Thorne believed he was saving humanity from its own hubris. He lunged at me, but I was ready. A struggle ensued, the room filled with the crackling energy of the time machine. I managed to overpower him, but in the process, the machine was damaged, its energy spiraling out of control. The room began to shake, the very air shimmering. And then, the twist. As the room threatened to collapse, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Finch. Alive. He explained that he had faked his death, knowing Thorne would try to stop him. The fall was staged, the note a distraction. He had used his own research to manipulate time, to create a temporal loop, giving him the time he needed to complete his work. The real killer? His own ambition. His obsession with being the first. The greatest. He had sacrificed his life, or rather, the perception of his life, to achieve his goal. He had, in a twisted way, taken the note's advice to heart. He stopped comparing himself to others, stopped caring about their opinions, and focused solely on his own goals, however extreme they might be. He hadn't wasted his time. He had manipulated it. The police arrived, Thorne was arrested, and Finch vanished into the time stream, leaving me with a profound sense of unease. He had won, in a way, but at what cost? He had proven that time, like ambition, can be a cruel mistress. And that sometimes, the greatest danger lies not in comparing yourself to others, but in comparing yourself to your own potential. And letting that comparison consume you. The rain had stopped, and a sliver of moon peeked through the clouds. I left the observatory, the weight of Finch's choices heavy on my soul. The case was closed, but the questions it raised would linger long after the storm had passed.
From rags to riches, the unbelievable journey of Aidan Cross. Aidan Cross had never known an easy day in his life. Born into the slums of Brooklyn, he grew up in a one-room apartment that barely had working electricity. His mother, a kind yet weary woman, worked 3 jobs just to put food on the table. His father had abandoned them when he was just 5, leaving Aidan with nothing but the determination to never be like him. At 12, Aidan took odd jobs, cleaning shoes, running errands, and even collecting discarded metal to sell. School was a luxury he couldn't afford to neglect, yet it was also a battlefield. He endured taunts from wealthier classmates, but he never let their words break him. Instead, he clung to a single dream: to change his fate. One evening, Aidan stumbled upon an old man struggling with his groceries. Without hesitation, he helped him. The man, Mr. Lancaster, turned out to be a retired entrepreneur who had once built an empire. He saw something rare in Aidan, a spark, a hunger. Over time, Mr. Lancaster became Aidan's mentor, teaching him about business, perseverance, and the power of knowledge. By 16, Aidan was hustling harder than ever. He learned everything he could about stocks, investments, and entrepreneurship from old books and library visits. He started selling refurbished phones, a small venture that soon grew into something bigger. Every dollar he earned was reinvested. At 18, with savings of a few $1,000s, he took a massive leap. He created an online marketplace for second-hand electronics. It was tough. There were nights he went hungry just to keep his website running. But failure wasn't an option. Then came the breakthrough. A viral video of his story, his grit, his resilience, captured the internet's attention. Investors saw potential, and within months, his business skyrocketed. At 22, Aidan Cross was a millionaire, but success wasn't what he expected. Money poured in, yet he felt an emptiness inside. He had climbed the mountain, but where was the fulfillment? He had been chasing wealth for so long, he had forgotten the hands that helped him get there. That's when the twist happened. Aidan decided to give it all away, not out of guilt, but out of purpose. He realized true wealth was in impact, not in numbers. He started a foundation to help struggling kids like him, offering mentorship, education, and opportunities. He built shelters, funded scholarships, and transformed lives, and that's when he found true success. Aidan Cross became more than a millionaire. He became a legend, a man who proved that no matter where you start, your ending is yours to write. And he chose to write one that would never be forgotten. The monsoon lashed against the monastery walls, a furious symphony of wind and rain mirroring the tempest in Ananda's heart. He'd just witnessed his beloved guru, the enlightened one, Siddhartha Gautama, subjected to a torrent of abuse. A scorned merchant, his face contorted with rage, had hurled insults, accusations, and even clumps of mud at the Buddha, who stood unmoving, a serene smile gracing his lips. Ananda, young and fiercely loyal, had clenched his fists, every fiber of his being screaming for retribution. He'd practically vibrated with the urge to defend his teacher, to unleash his own fury upon the offender. Only the Buddha's gentle hand on his arm had stayed him. Later, as the storm subsided and a fragile peace settled over the monastery, Ananda, still simmering with indignation, approached the Buddha. "Lord," he began, his voice trembling slightly, How could you just stand there? Why didn't you react? That man. He deserved to be. Ananda trailed off, unable to articulate the violent retribution he'd envisioned. The Buddha's gaze, filled with infinite compassion, met Ananda's. "Ananda," he said softly, "tell me, if someone offers you a gift, and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" Ananda frowned. "To the giver, Lord." "Precisely, the Buddha replied. The merchant offered me his anger, his insults, his hatred. If I do not accept them, if I do not react, to whom do they belong? Ananda's eyes widened. To him, Lord. Indeed, the Buddha confirmed. His anger is his burden. By not reacting, I refused to take on his burden. I allowed him to keep it. If I had reacted with anger, I would have accepted his gift, and then I, too, would have been burdened. Tell me, Ananda, what good would that have served? Would it have eased his suffering? Would it have brought peace? Ananda pondered this, the storm within him beginning to subside. He began to understand the profound wisdom in the Buddha's inaction. He realized that reacting with anger only fueled the fire, perpetuating the cycle of negativity. By remaining calm, the Buddha had not only protected himself but had also offered the merchant an opportunity. However slim, for reflection, days turned into weeks, and Ananda diligently practiced the Buddha's teachings on non-reaction. He learned to observe his emotions without judgment, to acknowledge them without being consumed by them. He discovered the power of pausing, of taking a breath before responding. He began to experience a newfound sense of peace, a quiet strength that emanated from within. One sweltering afternoon, as Ananda sat in meditation beneath the Bodhi tree, a commotion erupted nearby. He opened his eyes to see a group of villagers gathered around a young woman, their faces filled with anger and accusation. The woman, her head bowed, was trembling. Ananda recognized her. She was a widow, ostracized by the community for reasons he didn't yet know. Thief! One villager shouted. You stole from my shop. Liar! Another cried. You've been spreading malicious gossip. The accusations mounted, each one more venomous than the last. The woman remained silent, tears streaming down her face. Ananda felt a familiar surge of anger rising within him, the urge to defend the woman almost overwhelming him. But then, he remembered the Buddha's teachings. He took a deep breath, and instead of reacting, he simply observed. He watched as the villagers' anger escalated, their words becoming sharper, their accusations more severe. He noticed how their faces were contorted with rage, how their bodies were tense. He saw how they were consumed by their emotions, how they were trapped in a cycle of negativity, and then, he saw something else. He saw a flicker of fear in the eyes of one of the villagers, a young man who had been particularly vocal in his accusations. Ananda realized that the young man wasn't just angry, he was afraid. He was afraid that the woman had indeed stolen from him, afraid of the loss, afraid of his own vulnerability. Ananda approached the group, his voice calm and steady. Brothers, sisters, he said, I understand your anger, but I implore you, let us not be consumed by it. Let us hear the woman's side of the story. The villagers, surprised by Ananda's calm demeanor, hesitated. The young man who had been so vehemently accusing the woman looked away. His face flushed. Ananda turned to the woman. Sister, he said gently, can you tell us what happened? The woman, still trembling, managed to speak. I didn't steal anything, she stammered. I was borrowing some rice. I needed it for my children. A hush fell over the crowd. The young man who had accused her of theft looked up, his eyes filled with confusion. Borrowing? He whispered. Yes, the woman replied. I was going to return it. I swear. The young man's face crumpled. He looked at the woman, then at the ground. I thought. He trailed off, unable to articulate his fear, his assumption, his mistake. Ananda turned to the villagers. Brothers, sisters, he said, we all make mistakes. We all have fears. Let us not judge too quickly. Let us not be consumed by our anger. Let us instead offer compassion and understanding." The villagers, their anger now dissipated, began to murmur in agreement. The young man who had accused the woman stepped forward, his face filled with shame. I'm sorry," he said to the woman. "I was wrong." The woman looked at him, her tears now replaced with a gentle smile. "It's all right," she said. "I understand." Ananda watched as the villagers dispersed, their faces no longer contorted with anger but softened with understanding. He felt a deep sense of peace, a profound understanding of the power of non-reaction. He had not reacted to the villagers' anger, nor had he reacted to his own initial surge of indignation. He had simply observed, understood, and acted with compassion. Years later, Ananda, now a revered teacher himself, was recounting this story to a group of his students. He emphasized the importance of controlling one's emotions, of not reacting impulsively, of understanding the root cause of anger and fear. He explained how non-reaction was not about suppressing emotions, but about observing them, understanding them, and choosing how to respond, rather than simply reacting. One of his students, a young man named Devadatta, raised his hand. "Teacher," he asked, "what happened to the merchant who had abused the Buddha all those years ago?" Ananda smiled. "Ah, Devadatta," he said. "That is an interesting story. The merchant, consumed by his own anger and hatred, wandered from village to village, spewing his venom, finding temporary solace in his rage. But his anger, like a fire, eventually consumed him. He grew ill, both in body and mind, his heart heavy with the burden of his negativity. He became a shadow of his former self, a cautionary tale of the destructive power of uncontrolled emotions." Devadatta nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes, but Ananda continued, his voice taking on a different tone, "That is not the end of the story. One day, many years later, a frail old man, his eyes filled with remorse, stumbled back to the monastery. He was barely recognizable. It was the merchant. He had finally understood the Buddha's message, the power of non-reaction, the futility of anger. He had come to ask for forgiveness. A gasp rippled through the group of students. And, Ananda concluded, his voice soft, the Buddha, of course, forgave him. Not because the merchant deserved it, but because forgiveness is not about the other person, it is about freeing oneself from the burden of resentment. It is about choosing peace over anger. Devadatta was silent for a moment, then he spoke, his voice filled with awe. "Teacher," he said, "that is an incredible story. It teaches us so much about the power of non-reaction, the importance of controlling our emotions, and the transformative power of forgiveness." Ananda smiled. "Indeed, Devadatta," he said. "But the most important lesson, the one that took me years to fully understand, is this: the merchant's anger. His hatred, his insults. They were all gifts. Not gifts of kindness, but gifts nonetheless. They were gifts that taught me the true meaning of non-reaction. They were gifts that ultimately led me to peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And the greatest gift of all," he concluded, "was the realization that the merchant's anger, his burden, was never truly mine to carry." The power of not reacting, how to control your emotions. One day, a wealthy merchant, filled with arrogance, approached Gautama Buddha. He had heard of the great sage's wisdom but did not believe in his teachings. Determined to test Buddha, he walked up to him in the marketplace, surrounded by many villagers, and began hurling insults. "You are nothing but a fraud." The merchant sneered. "You mislead people with your words, but you have no real power. You pretend to be enlightened, but you are just another man with empty words." Buddha, calm as a still lake, sat in silence. He neither frowned nor responded to the merchant's words. His face remained serene, as if untouched by the hostility before him. The crowd watched intently, waiting to see how the great teacher would respond. Annoyed by Buddha's lack of reaction, the merchant raised his voice. Did you not hear me? I am insulting you. Do you have no pride? Are you too cowardly to respond? Buddha finally opened his eyes and spoke in a gentle voice. Tell me, if a man brings a gift but the recipient refuses to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The merchant, confused by the question, replied, it would still belong to the one who brought it. Buddha smiled. Indeed. So too with anger, hatred, and insults. If I do not accept them, they remain with the one who delivers them. The merchant was stunned. He realized the wisdom in Buddha's words. His anger began to dissolve, replaced by admiration and deep reflection. He bowed before Buddha and said, Forgive me, O wise one. I was blinded by my own ego. I let my emotions control me instead of mastering them. Buddha replied, Anger is like fire, it burns the one who carries it. If you respond to anger with more anger, the fire spreads and consumes everything in its path. But if you remain calm, the fire dies out on its own. By choosing not to react, we protect our peace and allow wisdom to flourish. The merchant left enlightened, understanding that true strength lies in mastering one's emotions rather than being controlled by them. From that day onward, he practiced patience and self-control, becoming a more compassionate and wise man. The villagers who witnessed the encounter also learned a valuable lesson about the power of non-reaction, carrying Buddha's wisdom into their own lives. Rain lashed against the windows of my office, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. A frantic call had shattered the quiet of my evening. Alastair Finch, renowned art collector, was dead. Suicide, they said. But I, Detective Inspector Leo Maxwell, smelled a rat. Finch, a man who'd built his empire from nothing, wasn't the type to give up. Prove yourself, his last, cryptic message read, scrawled on a canvas amidst the chaos of his ransacked gallery. Don't wait. I arrived at Finch's opulent mansion, the scene buzzing with uniformed officers. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. Finch's body lay sprawled before a shattered display case. A priceless diamond necklace, the serpent's eye, missing. The official story was a simple one. Finch, plagued by debt, had taken his own life after stealing the necklace for a desperate sale. Case closed. But something felt off. My gut, honed by years on the force, screamed foul play. The suicide note felt staged, the ransacking too theatrical. Finch's usually meticulous gallery was a whirlwind of chaos, yet some of the most valuable pieces remained untouched. It was as if the thief, or rather, the murderer, wanted us to believe it was a robbery gone wrong, a crime of passion born of desperation. I delved into Finch's life, a whirlwind of high society galas and hushed whispers. He was a man of secrets, a master of deception. His business dealings were murky, his enemies numerous. I interviewed his distraught wife, Isabella, a picture of grief, her hand clutching a silk handkerchief. I spoke to his disgruntled business partner, Victor Martel, a man with a steely gaze and an airtight alibi. Each conversation was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained fragmented. Days turned into weeks, the pressure mounting. My superiors were eager to close the case, to label it a tragic suicide and move on. But I couldn't. Finch's message echoed in my mind, prove yourself. Don't wait. It was a challenge, a dare. I focused on the missing necklace. It was too valuable to fence easily, too conspicuous to keep. The thief, I reasoned, wouldn't risk selling it immediately. They'd lay low, waiting for the heat to die down. But where could they hide such a treasure? Then, I remembered the canvas with Finch's message. It was an amateurish piece, unlike anything else in his collection. Almost an afterthought. I examined it closely, my fingers tracing the rough texture of the paint. And then I felt it, a slight bulge behind the canvas. With a surge of adrenaline, I carefully cut open the back of the canvas. Inside, nestled in a hollowed-out frame, was the serpent's eye. But that wasn't all. Along with the necklace was a small, encrypted memory stick. I rushed back to my office, my heart pounding. I plugged the memory stick into my computer, bypassing the encryption with a program I developed for just such occasions. The contents of the drive sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't financial records or incriminating evidence of illicit affairs. It was a video recording. The video showed Finch, not being attacked, but meticulously staging the break-in. He was calmly placing the necklace in the hollowed-out canvas, writing his cryptic message. The video ended with him turning to the camera and saying, "They'll never suspect." My mind reeled. Finch hadn't been murdered. He'd faked his own death. But why? The answer came in a flash, a detail I'd overlooked. Isabella's handkerchief. It wasn't silk. It was a specific type of rare, South American cotton, one I'd encountered only once before, in a case involving art forgery. I raced back to Finch's mansion. Isabella was gone. I found her in the gallery, not mourning her dead husband, but carefully packing several valuable paintings. As I apprehended her, the truth unfurled. Finch, facing mounting debts and a failing business, had concocted an elaborate scheme. He planned to fake his death, frame it as a suicide, and disappear with the necklace and the paintings, leaving Isabella to collect the insurance money. But Isabella, it turned out, had her own plans. She'd discovered his scheme and, driven by greed, decided to take everything for herself. She'd poisoned Finch, making his suicide permanent. The unexpected twist wasn't that Finch had been murdered. It was that he'd orchestrated his own disappearance, only to be double-crossed by his own wife. "Prove yourself. Don't wait." His message had been a desperate plea, not for me to find his killer, but for someone, anyone, to uncover the truth before it was too late. He'd underestimated Isabella, and in the end, his own clever plan had become his undoing. The taxi screeched to a halt, tires spitting gravel. "That's it, lady," the driver grunted, pointing a nicotine-stained finger at the sprawling JFK terminal. "New York." "Big time." I yanked my backpack from the trunk, the worn canvas a comforting weight against the sudden chill of the morning air. "Don't wait, I go to New York." The phrase echoed in my head, a mantra I'd clung to for months, ever since I'd seen the postcard, a sun-drenched Central Park, a blur of yellow cabs, a promise of something. Escape? Adventure? I wasn't sure, but the grey skies of London had become suffocating, a constant reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I'd booked the cheapest flight I could find, cashed in my meager savings, and told no one. Not my flatmate, not my boss, not even my mum. Just a hastily scribbled note, "Don't wait, I go to New York." It felt reckless, exhilarating. Like jumping off a cliff and hoping you'd sprout wings on the way down, the airport buzzed with a frenetic energy that was both overwhelming and infectious. I navigated the crowds, a lone figure in a sea of hurried travelers, clutching my passport like a lifeline. New York. I was finally here. The first few days were a whirlwind. The towering skyscrapers, the cacophony of sounds, the sheer scale of everything was breathtaking. I wandered through Times Square, mesmerized by the flashing lights. Ate hot dogs from street vendors, and got lost in the labyrinthine subway. I felt like a character in a movie, a tourist stumbling into a world both familiar and utterly foreign. I found a cheap hostel in the East Village, a tiny room with a shared bathroom and a view of a brick wall. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could build a new life here. I started looking for work, anything to pay the rent and keep me afloat. I handed out resumes at coffee shops, bookstores, even a dog-walking agency. Rejection after rejection chipped away at my optimism, but I refused to give up. Don't wait. I had to keep moving forward. One afternoon, while wandering through Greenwich Village, I stumbled upon a small art gallery. Intrigued by the vibrant paintings displayed in the window, I decided to go in. The gallery was quiet, save for the soft jazz playing in the background. A woman with silver hair and piercing blue eyes sat behind the counter, reading a book. "Welcome," she said, smiling warmly. "Can I help you?" I told her I was just browsing. But she seemed genuinely interested in talking to me. We chatted for hours about art, life, and everything in between. Her name was Eleanor, and she was the gallery owner. Over the next few weeks, I became a regular at the gallery. Eleanor was kind and generous, offering me advice and encouragement. She even introduced me to some of her artist friends, who were equally welcoming. I felt like I was finally starting to find my place in this crazy city. One evening, Eleanor invited me to a private viewing at the gallery. I dressed in the nicest clothes I had, a slightly crumpled dress I'd bought at a thrift store, and nervously made my way to the gallery. The place was buzzing with people. Artists, collectors, and other art enthusiasts. I felt a little out of place, but Eleanor quickly put me at ease, introducing me to everyone and making sure I had a glass of wine in my hand. As I mingled with the crowd, I noticed a painting that stopped me in my tracks. It was a portrait, a woman with fiery red hair and a determined expression. The woman's eyes seemed to follow me across the room. I felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if I knew her. "That's Clara," Eleanor said, noticing my gaze. "She was a brilliant artist, a real force of nature. She's stunning," I stammered. "She died a few years ago," Eleanor continued, her voice softening. "Cancer. A terrible loss." I stared at the painting, mesmerized. Something about the woman's face, the way she held her head, it was familiar. "Too familiar, Eleanor," I said, my voice trembling. "Did you say her name was Clara?" "Yes," she replied. "Clara. Clara Ashton." My breath caught in my throat. Ashton. My mother's maiden name. A name I hadn't heard since I was a child. "Eleanor," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. "Do you, by any chance, have any other paintings by Clara?" Eleanor looked at me strangely, but nodded. She led me to a back room, where several more of Clara's paintings were stored. One by one, she showed them to me, each one more breathtaking than the last, and then, she showed me one that made my blood run cold. It was a portrait of a young woman, with long brown hair and a shy smile. The woman's eyes were the same shade of green as mine. Beneath the painting, a small inscription read, "To my daughter, Lily." "Don't wait, I go to New York." I stumbled back, my legs suddenly weak. My mother. Clara Ashton. The woman in the paintings. My mother. I'd come to New York searching for escape, for adventure, for a new life. But what I found was something I never expected. I found my mother. And the note she left me wasn't just a goodbye. It was a message. A message from a mother I never knew, telling me to live my life, to chase my dreams, to not wait. Because she hadn't. She had gone to New York. And now, so had I. And in that moment, standing in the quiet back room of an art gallery, surrounded by my mother's paintings, I finally understood. Don't wait. It wasn't just a mantra. It was a legacy. Motivational story, Opportunities Don't Wait, The Story of a Laborer, by Monisha. Chapter 1, The Morning Rush. The sun was barely up, casting a weak golden hue over the bustling streets of the industrial city. For most people, it was just the start of another mundane day. But for Rajan, a laborer, it was the beginning of the most crucial morning of his life. Rajan had been working for years at the same construction site, carrying bricks, mixing cement, and doing the heavy lifting that no one else wanted to. He lived a simple life in a small, cramped apartment with his wife, Anjali, and their 2 children. His days were spent under the hot sun, bending his back and exerting every ounce of strength to earn the meager wages that barely kept his family afloat. But there was a fire inside Rajan that never went out. He dreamed of a life beyond the construction site. He wanted to provide better for his children. He wanted to own a house, not just a tiny room with peeling paint and a leaky roof. He wanted to give Anjali the life she deserved, a life of ease, of comfort, of joy. And yet, every day, It felt like those dreams were slipping further and further away. This morning, however, something felt different. As Rajan packed his lunch into his old, tattered bag, his hands shook with anticipation. He had been given a chance. A single, fleeting chance to break free from the cycle of hardship. His boss, Mr. Verma, had spoken to him yesterday. There's a job opening at the new high-rise downtown. A real opportunity for someone who can handle the pressure, Mr. Verma had said, looking Rajan up and down with a speculative gaze. Rajan didn't fully understand what kind of opportunity it was, but it didn't matter. A job at the high-rise meant a chance for advancement. A chance to step out of the shadows of the construction site and into something better. Rajan didn't hesitate. He accepted the job offer, even though he didn't know what it would involve. He had no idea if he could succeed, but he wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. Not when it was right in front of him. Chapter 2, The High-Rise Challenge. The downtown area was filled with towering skyscrapers, gleaming windows reflecting the hustle of the city. Rajan stood at the entrance of the high-rise, the building's glass doors sliding open with a soft swish. He could feel the cool air-conditioned breeze hit his face as he walked into the lobby. It was like stepping into another world. He looked up at the elevator, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. The moment of truth. As he ascended to the 40th floor, Rajan's mind raced. He had been a laborer all his life, and here he was, in a luxurious building surrounded by businessmen and executives who didn't know the meaning of hard work. He was out of his depth, but he wouldn't show it. He couldn't. His family's future depended on him giving everything he had. The elevator doors opened to a modern office space. The floor was polished, the walls sleek and white, and there were people in suits walking around, talking on their phones, and typing away at their computers. Rajan felt like a fish out of water, but he straightened his back and walked forward with determination. Rajan. A voice called out. It was Mr. Verma, waving from the other side of the room. Over here, buddy. Rajan followed the sound of his boss's voice and was introduced to the foreman, Rakesh, who would oversee his work. Rakesh was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern face and an air of authority. He looked Rajan up and down, sizing him up. You'll be working with a team of experienced laborers, Rakesh said, handing Rajan a helmet and gloves. But don't get comfortable. This is a different kind of job. We're building the foundations for a project that could change everything. Rajan nodded, though his heart beat faster. He had no idea what kind of foundation Rakesh meant. But he knew one thing, he had to prove himself. Chapter 3, The pressure builds. Days turned into weeks, and Rajan worked tirelessly. The job was harder than anything he had ever done before. The stakes were higher. The pressure was overwhelming. His body ached every night as he dragged himself back to his tiny apartment, exhausted and drained. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't quit. Rakesh pushed him to his limits, demanding perfection. We don't have time for mistakes here, Rajan, Rakesh would say, his voice gruff. If you want to move up, you better prove yourself fast. Rajan did everything he could to keep up. He learned quickly, picked up new skills, and worked faster than anyone else on the team. The building was starting to take shape, and Rajan was proud to be a part of something so grand. One morning, however, Rajan found himself in a dangerous situation. A mistake in the planning had caused a minor collapse, and it was up to him to fix it. There was no time to waste. Rajan had to make a split-second decision. He climbed up the scaffolding, his heart racing, and worked tirelessly to stabilize the structure before it fell completely. His hands were covered in blood from the sharp metal edges. His body trembled from exhaustion. But in that moment, Rajan realized something. He was no longer just a laborer. He had become someone who could be trusted with responsibility. Someone who could make a difference. Chapter 4. The unexpected twist. Just as Rajan thought he had earned his place in the high-rise project, something unexpected happened. Rakesh called him into his office, and Rajan's heart sank. Had he done something wrong? "You've done well, Rajan," Rakesh said, his tone unreadable. "But the truth is, we've been keeping an eye on you for a while now." Rajan stared at him, confused. "We're going to move forward with you," Rakesh continued. "But not as a laborer." Rajan's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean?" Rakesh leaned forward, his eyes intense. "We've been searching for someone who's willing to take risks. Someone who isn't afraid to push boundaries. Someone like you. You've got what it takes, Rajan. We're offering you a position as a supervisor. No more hard labor. You'll be leading a team of your own." Rajan couldn't believe it. It was everything he had ever dreamed of. But then the twist came, however, Rakesh said, his voice cold. "There's a catch. To take this role, you'll need to prove that you're willing to let go of your old life. You can't be a laborer anymore. That means no more family, no more distractions. Your old life is over." Rajan's heart raced. The offer was everything he had worked for, but at what cost? Could he really give up his family, his roots, the very things that had kept him grounded all these years? In that moment, Rajan realized the truth. Opportunities don't wait. They come at a price. And sometimes, the price is more than you're willing to pay. Chapter 5. The Decision. Rajan walked out of Rakesh's office, his mind spinning. The offer was tempting, but it wasn't the future he had envisioned. He had worked so hard, but not just for a promotion. He had worked for his family, for a better life for Anjali and the kids. Could he really turn his back on them for a chance at a higher position? As he stood in the lobby of the high-rise, Rajan made a decision. He called Anjali. "I've been offered a promotion," he said, his voice trembling. "But it's going to mean everything changing. Should I take it?" Anjali's voice was calm but firm. "Rajan, you've worked so hard for us. But you know what matters. The job won't make us happy if we lose each other along the way." Rajan paused, the weight of her words sinking in. In the end, he declined the promotion. He chose his family over the fleeting promise of success. He realized that the true opportunity wasn't in the high-rise. It was in the love and support of the people who had always been by his side, and that, Rajan thought, was the greatest victory of all. The other side of storms. Opportunities don't wait. Chapter 1. A storm approaches. The sky darkened over the vast Atlantic, thunder rumbling in the distance. Captain Ryan Carter gripped the wheel of the Stormbreaker, his cargo ship slicing through the waves with determination. The storm warnings had been clear, but his client's urgent request left him no choice but to push forward. Every storm he had faced taught him that danger and opportunity often came hand in hand. As lightning illuminated the night sky, Ryan's thoughts drifted to his past, to the moments where life had tested him beyond reason. Just like the storm before him, those challenges seemed insurmountable at the time. But every hardship had led to a breakthrough. He had learned to embrace the chaos rather than fear it. "Captain," his first mate, Logan, called out. "Wind speeds increasing. We're in for a rough night." Ryan simply nodded, his jaw tightening. He knew that beyond this storm, something awaited, something that could change his fate forever. But what he didn't realize was that this storm was about to take everything he thought he knew and turn it upside down. Chapter 2. The eye of the storm. Winds howled, waves crashed, and the ship lurched violently. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the storm broke. and the stormbreaker sailed into an eerie calm. The eye of the storm was a strange, beautiful, and deceptive place, a brief respite before chaos resumed. Ryan checked the horizon. A glimmer of something unusual caught his eye. "Do you see that?" Logan asked, squinting. Ryan nodded. Floating in the calm waters was what appeared to be a raft. And on it, a lone figure lay motionless. Chapter 3, a mysterious survivor. Pulling the survivor aboard, the crew was shocked to find a woman, no older than 30, dressed in tattered clothing. Her breathing was shallow, but she was alive. "Who is she?" Logan whispered as Ryan carried her below deck. Ryan didn't answer. He had no idea, but something in his gut told him she wasn't just some lost sailor. He had seen storms before, but none had ever delivered a mystery like this. As she regained consciousness, her eyes shot open, filled with terror and relief. "Where am I?" she gasped. "You're safe," Ryan reassured her. "I'm Captain Carter." "Who are you?" Her lips trembled before she whispered, "Sophia," and then, with a haunted look in her eyes, she said something that chilled Ryan to the bone. "We have to keep moving. The real storm is just beginning." Chapter 4, a hidden message. As Sophia recovered, she revealed pieces of her story. She had been aboard a luxury yacht that was attacked by unknown assailants. She alone had escaped, drifting for days in open water. But there was more. She had something people were willing to kill for. Reaching into her soaked jacket, she retrieved a waterproof pouch. Inside was a set of documents, a map, and a key. "This," she said, "can change everything. But only if we act fast." Ryan studied the items. The map showed a remote island, unmarked on standard navigation charts. The key was labeled with a single word, destiny. Ryan had spent years fighting against the waves, against fate itself. But now, it seemed, fate had come for him. Chapter 5, Racing the Storm. With no time to waste, Ryan and his crew changed course. The coordinates on Sophia's map led them straight into the heart of the Pacific. Every moment counted. Whoever had attacked her yacht would be searching for her, but with every storm comes a moment of decision, to retreat or push forward. And Ryan had made his choice. As the engines roared and the waves grew wilder, the chase was on. Chapter 6, the unexpected twist. When they finally reached the island, anticipation filled the air. But as they stepped onto the shore, they were met with an impossible sight. Ryan froze. He had expected treasure, danger, or both. But what he saw instead was himself. A photograph. An old newspaper clipping. A report of a shipwrecked captain from decades ago. His name. His face. The impossible truth hit him like a rogue wave. This storm, this journey, had led him not just to an opportunity, but to a forgotten past. One where he had been here before, and now, he had to remember why. Chapter 7, The Truth Beneath the Waves. Sophia's expression darkened. "You were never supposed to return," she whispered. Ryan clenched his fists. "What do you mean? This island, it's a trap," she said. "You weren't just shipwrecked years ago, you were brought here for a reason. And now, they know you've come back." The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the trees. Armed men emerged from the jungle, their weapons trained on the crew. The leader, a grizzled man with a knowing smirk, stepped forward. "Welcome home, Captain Carter. We've been expecting you." Chapter 8, Seizing the Opportunity. Ryan's mind raced. If he had been here before, if he had escaped once, he could do it again. This time, though, he wouldn't leave empty-handed. Sophia pressed the key into his palm. "The bunker. Everything we need to escape and expose them is inside." With a nod to his crew, Ryan took a deep breath. The storm had brought him here, but this time, he would decide how the story ended. He turned to face the armed men with a grin. "You're right. I am home." And I plan to take back what's mine. Lightning split the sky as the battle began. Epilogue. The calm after the storm. Days later, the stormbreaker sailed away from the island, battered but victorious. The truth had been uncovered, the enemies defeated, and Ryan had found what he never knew he was looking for. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the dissipating storm clouds, he realized something profound. Storms didn't just destroy. They revealed. They tested. And on the other side of every storm, there was always an opportunity. You just had to be willing to take it. The end.